In the gentle embrace of the setting sun, let us embark on a captivating journey back to the medieval era, a period spanning from the 5th to the 15th centuries in Europe. This epoch witnessed the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the dawn of the Renaissance, a time rich in history and societal transformation. Today, we delve into the lives of women during this age, an often overlooked yet fascinating aspect of history that offers profound insights. To comprehend the experiences of medieval women, we must first grasp the societal foundations that shaped their lives. The Middle Ages were characterized by feudalism, a hierarchical system where land was exchanged for service and loyalty. This social structure significantly influenced the roles and opportunities available to women. As we wander through the cobbled streets of a medieval town, we can sense the struggles and triumphs that these women faced daily. In a typical feudal society, the king or queen held the highest position, followed by the nobility, knights, clergy, and finally the peasants. Regardless of their social class, women were legally considered subservient to men in their lives, whether fathers, brothers, or husbands. This era was deeply rooted in patriarchal societal norms and expectations. However, it would be an oversimplification to assume that all women lived lives of passive submission. In fact, women of the medieval era held diverse roles, just as their male counterparts did. Noble women, while primarily responsible for bearing heirs, often managed large estates in the absence of their husbands. This entailed a range of skills, including financial management, supervising work, and making crucial decisions for the estate. As we imagine a noble woman in her grand manner, we sense the weight of responsibility on her shoulders and the subtle strength in her gaze as she oversees her vast domain. Peasant women, on the other hand, led lives filled with hard work and toil. From sunrise to sunset, women in the Middle Ages dedicated their lives to tending to animals, cultivating crops, and caring for their families. Their hands, weathered by relentless labor, bore the testament to their unwavering resilience. Despite the hardships they faced, these women found joy and fulfillment in their families and communities, in shared meals, and in the stories they exchanged. Life was undoubtedly challenging, but it was also filled with laughter, love, and the indomitable spirit of human resilience. Religion held a significant place in the Middle Ages, and it provided solace and purpose for many women. Some dedicated their lives to prayer and service as nuns, while others emerged as influential figures within their religious communities. The Church offered a unique avenue for women to exercise power and influence, an opportunity that was scarce in other spheres of medieval society. While education was limited in the Middle Ages, particularly for women, it is important to recognize that not all medieval women were uneducated. Noble women and women of the Church often received an education, learning to read and write, understand Latin, and study religious texts. In contrast, peasant women were primarily educated in practical skills essential for their daily lives. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of medieval women's lives, we begin to notice striking similarities and differences with our own lives. The roles, responsibilities, and expectations placed upon them were shaped by their time. But at their core, these women were not so different from us. They loved, they struggled, they persevered, and they dreamed. They were mothers, daughters, wives, and sisters, leaders, workers, scholars, and believers. They were women of strength and heart who in their own unique ways shaped the world we live in today. As the sun dips below the horizon and the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, we bid farewell to the Middle Ages for now, carrying with us a newfound appreciation for the women who lived during this era. However, our journey is far from over, as countless more stories await our discovery, stories of women whose lives we will explore. For now, close your eyes and let your imagination transport you to the echoes of their laughter, the strength of their spirit, and the richness of their legacy. As you drift off to sleep, let their stories inspire you, provide comfort, and remind you of the enduring power of the human spirit. As we continue our exploration of the lives of women during the medieval period, let us delve into the societal structure and the roles women played within it. It is crucial to acknowledge that the Middle Ages spanned a vast period from the 5th to the 15th century, making it challenging to provide a comprehensive picture. Nevertheless, we can make broad strokes to illustrate the general trends and realities of that time. During the medieval period, society was predominantly feudal. At the top of the hierarchy stood the king, followed by nobles, knights, and then the majority of the population, the peasants. Women's positions within this hierarchy were largely determined by their association with men, whether it was their father, husband, or son. Consequently, a woman's life and status were significantly influenced by her birth and marriage. Noble women held a position of relative privilege. While they were often educated, their education was not as extensive as that of their male counterparts. Their primary focus was on managing a household, a skill deemed crucial for noble women. In the absence of their husbands, noble women were expected to oversee various aspects of the manor, including food production and resolving disputes among the servants. Despite their responsibilities, they held limited power in the political sphere and were often used as pawns in political alliances and marriages. Similarly, the lives of peasant women were also shaped by their marital status. Peasant women, unlike their noble counterparts, were engaged in arduous labor. They worked in the fields, tended to livestock, cooked, cleaned, and cared for their families. Their workdays commenced at dawn and concluded well after dusk, with their tasks varying according to the changing seasons. Life for women in towns and cities was somewhat different. Women participated in various trades and businesses, although they were often relegated to unskilled labor. Some women became alewives, brewing and selling ale, while others pursued careers as bakers, spinners, or laresses. Despite these endeavors, women's work was often undervalued compared to men's, resulting in lower earnings. However, there were exceptions. Some women defied societal norms and expectations, achieving remarkable success in their chosen fields. For instance, women like Hildegard of Bingen, an abbess, writer and composer, and Julian of Norwich, a mystic, carved out unique roles for themselves, contributing to literature, music, and theology. Their achievements demonstrated that women, given the opportunity, could excel in traditionally male-dominated spheres. The Church held a significant influence over the lives of medieval women. Women were perceived through the lens of Christian doctrine, often categorized as either saints or sinners. The Church reiterated the notion of women's inherent sinfulness, drawing from the biblical story of Eve. This belief reinforced women's subordinate status, contributing to their marginalization. Nunneries provided an alternative to marriage, allowing women to dedicate their lives to God. Although secluded from the wider society, nuns could receive an education and in some cases hold positions of authority. Marriage was a crucial aspect of a woman's life during this period. It was less about love and more about economic and political alliances. Brides were often quite young, while their husbands were significantly older. Women had limited say in choosing their partners. Once married, they were expected to bear children, preferably sons, to continue the family name. Despite the harsh realities of the Middle Ages, women found ways to exert influence and express their individuality. They contributed to their communities, managed households, and raised children, ensuring the survival and continuity of society. Their strength and resilience are a testament to their enduring spirit, which continues to inspire us today. As we conclude this section, let's remember that the lives of women in the Middle Ages were not uniform. They were shaped by various factors, including class, location, and individual circumstances. In the next part of our journey, we will delve into the cultural aspects of women's lives, exploring fashion, art, and entertainment. Until then, let the echoes of the past lull you into a peaceful slumber. As we unravel the tapestry of history and delve deeper into the lives of medieval women, we discover their pivotal role in the domestic sphere. The realm of the home was not merely a place of shelter and warmth, but an environment of intense labor and responsibility. Women in medieval times were the caregivers, providing food, clothing, and healthcare to their families. They were the educators, imparting essential survival skills to their children, and in some cases even teaching them to read and write. In most households, the woman was the primary cook. Cooking was not just about heating and serving food, but involved a complex process of growing, harvesting, preserving, and preparing it. Women tended to the gardens, gathering fruits, vegetables, and herbs, and preserved food for the winter months through pickling, drying, and salting. They were also responsible for baking bread, a staple food in medieval diets. This task alone could consume a significant portion of a woman's day, as the dough required kneading, rising, and baking in a wood-fired oven. Clothing was another domain where women played a crucial role during medieval times. Women in the medieval period had diverse roles and responsibilities. They spun fiber into yarn, wove it into cloth, and then sewed it into garments. They also washed and mended clothes, knitted hats, gloves and socks, and made shoes and boots from leather. Additionally, women were the primary caregivers, tending to the sick and injured. They possessed knowledge of herbs and natural remedies, concocting potions, salves, and infusions to treat various ailments. Childbirth was also the domain of women. Midwives, often older women who had given birth themselves, assisted in the birthing process. Beyond the home, many women worked outside, contributing to the family income. They worked as brewers, bakers, alewives, and merchants, and even ran inns, mills, and breweries. Some women held positions of power, such as abbesses, who were the female heads of monastic communities. Education was also a part of women's lives. While formal education was largely reserved for men, particularly those in the clergy, women were not entirely excluded. Some women, especially those from wealthy families, received education from tutors and could read and write. They studied Latin, the language of the church, and learned household management skills like accounting and record-keeping. Despite these roles and responsibilities, women in the medieval period were not considered equals to men. They were generally perceived as weaker both physically and mentally, and were often depicted as more susceptible to temptation. Women were excluded from political power and denied the right to own property. However, some women defied societal norms and carved out positions of power and influence for themselves. As we delve deeper into the lives of women during the medieval era, we'll encounter stories of remarkable women who defied societal norms and left an indelible mark on history. We'll explore the lives of queens and noblewomen, saints and mystics, and everyday women who navigated the complexities of life in this tumultuous yet captivating period. But for now, let's close our eyes and imagine the vibrant energy of a medieval home, where a woman stood at its center, orchestrating the rhythm of daily life. Picture her tending to the garden, kneading dough, weaving cloth, caring for the sick, educating her children, and working her trade. Despite the numerous challenges she faced, she was the pillar of her family and her community, a testament to the resilience and strength of women throughout history. As we journey further into the medieval period, we find ourselves exploring the domestic sphere of women's lives. When we think of the Middle Ages, our minds often conjure images of knights in shining armor and grand castles. However, for most women, their realm was the home, the heart of everyday existence. Regardless of their noble birth or humble beginnings, women were primarily associated with the domestic sphere, and as such, they bore significant responsibilities and duties. From dawn till dusk, women in the Middle Ages were engaged in a myriad of chores. Preparing food, making clothing, and caring for children were all integral parts of their daily routine. They possessed the skills of spinning, weaving, and sewing, which were essential for their survival in the absence of modern conveniences. These tasks were labor-intensive and time-consuming. For instance, spinning wool could take up to 9 hours a day, leaving little time for other pursuits. Despite this heavy workload, medieval women were also expected to maintain a serene demeanor and create a pleasant household environment. Cooking was another significant aspect of a woman's role, and it was often a complex and arduous task. Meals were not as simple as they are today, requiring careful preparation and attention to detail. Without the luxury of refrigeration or fast food, women meticulously planned meals, considering ingredient availability and seasonal changes. They mastered food preservation, cheese-making, brewing beer, and bread baking. Knowledge of medicinal herbs was crucial, as they often served as primary caregivers during family illnesses. Childbirth and childcare were vital aspects of a woman's role. In a time of limited medical knowledge, childbirth was perilous and harrowing. Women relied heavily on community support, from midwives and relatives to friends. After childbirth, mothers primarily cared for their children, expected to raise them with good morals and manners. This responsibility was taken seriously, as children were seen as the future of the family and community. While it may seem women were confined to the home, this wasn't entirely the case. Many women engaged in business, especially if widowed or their husbands were away. They operated shops, inns, bakeries, and traded in markets, owning land and property. The notion of women as solely domestic creatures is a myth debunked by historical records. Women also participated in charitable work, visiting the sick, aiding the poor, and engaging in religious activities. Many found outlets for their talents and ambitions within the church. Women could become nuns, dedicating their lives to prayer and service, or mystics and visionaries, shaping religious thought and practice. Despite the challenges, women in the Middle Ages were resilient and resourceful, navigating societal constraints and carving out spaces for themselves. They were far from passive or helpless. Women in the Middle Ages were active participants in their lives, significantly contributing to the functioning of their households and communities. As we explore their lives, it's crucial to recognize that their experiences varied widely based on social status, geographical location, and personal circumstances. However, by identifying common threads, we can gain a comprehensive understanding of their lives during this captivating period. As we conclude this section, let's reflect on the resilience and strength of these medieval women. Their lives were undoubtedly challenging, yet they persevered, shaping history in both subtle and profound ways. Moving forward, we'll delve deeper into the societal roles and expectations of women, their influence on the church, and their contributions to the arts and sciences. Our journey will lead us to an intriguing aspect of medieval life: the experience of women in education and intellectual pursuits. This topic often sparks curiosity, given the Middle Ages' reputation for limited freedoms and opportunities for women. However, the reality is far more complex and nuanced. In the early Middle Ages, education was predominantly a privilege of the elite, and women, regardless of their social standing, were generally excluded from formal educational settings. Nevertheless, this didn't mean women were entirely devoid of learning. In many households, particularly those of the nobility, private tutors were employed to teach children reading, writing, arithmetic, and religious doctrine. Girls received this basic education alongside their brothers, which was deemed essential for managing household affairs and comprehending religious teachings. As we progress into the later Middle Ages, we witness a growing emphasis on education, and surprisingly, women were not entirely excluded from this pursuit. It's crucial to recognize the significant role played by the Church in shaping the educational landscape of this era. Convents and monasteries emerged as the few institutions offering formal education. Women who joined these religious communities gained access to knowledge that was otherwise inaccessible to their counterparts in secular society. They could study Latin, read and transcribe religious texts, and even engage in scholarly debates. One notable example is Hilda of Whitby, a 7th-century English abbess renowned for her wisdom and learning. Her monastery at Whitby became a renowned center of learning, and she herself is credited with educating 5 future bishops. While Hilda's story stands out, it was not an isolated occurrence. Women in religious communities across Europe were actively engaged in intellectual pursuits, contributing to the rich tapestry of medieval knowledge and culture. However, it would be unfair to overlook the many women who were denied access to education. Women from lower social strata, such as peasants and servants, were primarily occupied with laborious work, leaving little time for intellectual pursuits. Even for those who had the means and the time, societal norms and expectations often acted as barriers. Women were expected to prioritize their roles as wives, mothers, and homemakers, and the pursuit of learning was often perceived as an unnecessary distraction. Nevertheless, there were women who defied these norms and carved out a space for themselves in the world of letters. Christine Dazan, a writer and philosopher, is a shining example. Born in late 14th century Italy, Christine was educated by her father and later moved to France. She is celebrated for her writings on women's rights and her critiques of the misogynistic attitudes prevalent in her society. She wielded her pen as a weapon against the prevailing norms, boldly asserting the intellectual prowess of women. Her legacy indelibly marked medieval literature and thought. As we delve deeper into the lives of women during this era, it's imperative to acknowledge the diverse experiences they endured. While many were bound by societal expectations, others defied these constraints and made significant contributions to the intellectual heritage of the Middle Ages. These tales of resilience and defiance serve as a reminder that, despite the limitations of their time, women were active participants in shaping history's course. As the night deepens, let these stories of medieval women lull you into a peaceful slumber, inviting dreams of ancient castles, echoing cloisters, and the gentle rustle of parchment in candle-lit rooms. And when you awaken, may you carry with you a profound understanding of the past and the women who played pivotal roles in its shaping. As we continue our exploration of women's lives in medieval times, our focus now shifts to education, an area often overlooked in discussions of this period. We've spoken of noble women and peasant women, their roles and duties. But what about their minds? What knowledge did they acquire, and how did they acquire it? In the early Middle Ages, education was predominantly a privilege for males, especially those of noble birth. However, this doesn't imply that women were entirely devoid of knowledge. While daughters of nobility were not always given formal education, they were taught by their mothers and governesses the essential skills for household management. These included not only domestic chores, but also lessons in management, diplomacy, and occasionally even basic reading and writing. Religious institutions also played a crucial role in women's education. Convents emerged as significant centers of learning, with many nuns being taught to read and write in Latin. Through the transcription of religious texts, these women made a limited but significant contribution to the intellectual culture of their time. Within the hallowed halls of the convent, they found a sanctuary from the traditional roles society had imposed upon them, allowing them to nurture their intellectual abilities. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that this opportunity was not accessible to all women. Convents primarily catered to the daughters of the nobility, leaving peasant women with limited opportunities to learn beyond their daily responsibilities. This disparity in education reflected the deep social divisions prevalent during the Middle Ages. As the Middle Ages progressed, so did the prospects for women's education. The late Middle Ages witnessed the emergence of vernacular literature, which democratized access to written knowledge and empowered more women to read and write. Figures like Christine Dizon, an Italian-French late medieval author, emerged as educated women who could engage with the vernacular. Panzanella, often hailed as Europe's first professional woman writer, offers a captivating glimpse into the intellectual lives of women during the late Middle Ages. Despite these advancements, the education of women remained a contentious issue. Societal norms and religious beliefs of the time perpetuated the notion of women's inferiority and their primary role as mothers and household managers. These prevailing views often led to the marginalization of women in educational institutions, with only a handful permitted to study at the newly established universities. Nevertheless, medieval women demonstrated remarkable resilience in their pursuit of knowledge, finding innovative ways to educate themselves and challenge the limitations imposed upon them. Whether through the teachings of their mothers, the guidance of the convent, or the clandestine reading of vernacular literature, their stories serve as a testament to the enduring human spirit and its relentless pursuit of knowledge, even in the most restrictive of circumstances. As we embark on a closer examination of the roles of women in medieval society, it is crucial to recognize that these women were not merely wives and mothers. They were also learners and, at times, teachers. Their lives were complex and nuanced, shaped by the times in which they lived, yet also by their own desires and aspirations. As we continue our journey, let us keep these revelations in mind, acknowledging the struggles and triumphs of these women who lived so long ago. Our exploration of women's lives during medieval times is far from complete. In the upcoming section, we will delve into the world of work, exploring the roles women played in the economy of the Middle Ages. From the fields to the marketplaces, from the home to the workshop, we will uncover the myriad ways in which women contributed to their societies. But for now, let us pause and reflect on the lessons we have learned from the women of the past and the paths they have paved for the women of the future. As we continue our journey back in time to the Middle Ages, we now find ourselves exploring the roles and expectations of women within the realm of education and literacy. While education during this era differed from what we understand today, it played a significant role in shaping the lives of women, particularly those from higher social classes. The opportunity to receive an education was largely determined by a woman's social standing. Noble women were often granted the right to education, Although this privilege was not extended to all, learning was typically conducted within the confines of a monastery or a convent, where girls were taught by nuns in various subjects, such as reading, writing, music, and embroidery. These institutions provided a rare space for women to learn, create, and express themselves, a stark contrast to the predominantly male-dominated society of the time. Despite societal limitations, some women seized the opportunity for education and made significant contributions to society. Hildegard of Bingen, for instance, was a remarkable abbess, artist, composer, and writer known for her religious visions and contributions to music and literature. However, it's important to recognize that the majority of women during the Middle Ages faced far less fortunate circumstances. Women of lower social classes, such as peasants, were typically deprived of formal education. Their lives were consumed by hard manual labor in fields or at home, where they tended to their families and household chores. Their education was limited to practical skills necessary for survival, such as cooking, weaving, and brewing. The divide between social classes was also evident in literacy. While noble women had the opportunity to learn to read and write, this was not a common skill among the lower classes. Reading and writing were considered luxuries, accessible only to those in religious orders or the upper echelons of society. For peasant women, illiteracy didn't signify a lack of intelligence, but rather reflected the social norms and constraints of their era. In stark contrast, there were women renowned for their intellect and literary contributions, such as Christine de Pin. Born in Italy and later moving to France, de Pin was one of the first women to earn a living through writing. She authored numerous works on various subjects, including romantic ballads and feminist literature. Her groundbreaking book, The Book of the City of Ladies, defended women and their capacity for learning, challenging the misogynistic attitudes of her time. The Middle Ages also witnessed the emergence of the Beguines, a community of religious women residing in semi-monastic communities known as Beguines. These women were not nuns nor affiliated with a specific religious order. Instead, they dedicated their lives to prayer and charitable acts, often supporting themselves through various crafts or teaching. Many Beguines were well educated and literate, contributing significantly to religious literature of the era. In the realm of education and literacy, it becomes evident that women in the Middle Ages navigated a complex web of societal norms and expectations. Despite the constraints of their time, many women pursued knowledge and learning, leaving an indelible mark on history. Their stories serve as a testament to the resilience and adaptability of women who, against all odds, carved out spaces for themselves to learn, create, and contribute to their societies. As we transition into our next section, we will delve deeper into the roles and responsibilities of women in the workforce during the Middle Ages. We will explore the diverse occupations available to women, the challenges they faced, and the invaluable contributions they made to their societies. So, close your eyes and allow yourself to be transported back in time to the bustling markets and workshops of medieval Europe. Let the stories of these remarkable women lull you into a peaceful slumber. As we continue our journey through the life of women in the medieval period, we find ourselves exploring the realm of work and labor. It is a common misconception that medieval women were confined solely to the domestic sphere, limited to the roles of wives and mothers. While this notion holds some truth, it overlooks the vast array of occupations and roles that women undertook during this time. In the Middle Ages, a woman's work was largely determined by her social status. Noble women, despite their elevated social status, were expected to manage their households, oversee their children's education, and occasionally supervise their husbands' estates when they were away. This management involved coordinating a large number of servants and workers, making it an intense and demanding role. In contrast, peasant women's work was primarily agricultural. In an agrarian society, the majority of the population lived and worked on the land. Women were involved in all aspects of food production, from planting and harvesting crops to managing livestock. They also handled various domestic tasks, including cooking, brewing, spinning, weaving, and caring for children. In towns and cities, women could sometimes be found working in diverse trades. Records indicate that women worked as bakers, brewers, silk makers, and even blacksmiths. Some women even established their own businesses, often taking over their husband's trades upon his passing. However, this was not always easy, as guilds frequently restricted women's participation in certain trades and professions. Despite the constraints, many women worked, but their work was often devalued compared to men's. They were frequently paid less for the same work, and their labor was often considered secondary to their roles as wives and mothers. This devaluation of women's work has persisted into the modern era, serving as a reminder of the long history of gender inequality. Despite these limitations, women in the Middle Ages demonstrated remarkable resilience and ingenuity. They navigated a society that often restricted their opportunities, carving out spaces for themselves in the world of work. They were essential contributors to the economy, the functioning of their households, and the well-being of their communities. Even in religious life, women found ways to contribute to society. Many women dedicated their lives to the service of God by becoming nuns. Within the confines of the convent, they could pursue various roles, including scholarship, teaching, nursing, and leadership. Some, like Hildegard of Bingen, gained recognition for their intellectual contributions, writing works on theology, botany, and medicine. Reflecting on the lives of women in the Middle Ages reveals that they were far from passive figures. Despite often working under challenging conditions, they diligently supported their families and communities. Their stories serve as a testament to the strength and resilience of women throughout history, inspiring us to continue striving for gender equality in our own time. In our next section, we will explore another crucial aspect of medieval women's lives: their roles within the family and their experiences of marriage and motherhood. We will delve into the customs and expectations of medieval marriage, the responsibilities of wives and mothers, and the challenges they faced. As we do, we will shed light on the complex and often overlooked lives of women in the Middle Ages. As darkness descended upon the medieval countryside, a chill would settle in the air, and the sounds of the day would gradually fade away. The women of the household would retreat indoors, having completed their day's work, and the family would gather around the hearth for a meal. This was a time for storytelling, shared laughter, and the comforting routine of family life. It was the backbone of medieval society, the fundamental unit of organization, and women were at its very heart. The meal would typically consist of hearty, simple fare, the product of the family's own labor. Bread, cheese, and ale were the staples, supplemented by whatever fruits, vegetables, or meats the season permitted. The women of the house would have devoted a significant portion of the day to preparing this meal, grinding grain, kneading dough, tending the fire, and stirring the pot. While it was physically demanding work, it was also deeply ingrained in their lives, a rhythm they knew as well as their own heartbeat. After the meal, the family might gather around the fire for a time of storytelling and music. The tales they shared were rich and varied, drawn from a deep well of tradition and folklore. Women played a crucial role in this oral tradition, passing down stories from one generation to the next, preserving the collective memory and wisdom of the community. They were the keepers of the cultural flame, the guardians of the community's shared identity. Despite the hardships and limitations of their lives, many women in the Middle Ages found ways to exercise agency and assert their individuality. Some became skilled artisans, producing beautiful textiles, pottery, and other goods. Others became healers, using their knowledge of herbs and natural remedies to treat the sick and injured. Still others became nuns, dedicating their lives to spiritual pursuits and often gaining a measure of freedom and autonomy not available to their secular counterparts. Indeed, the convent was one of the few places in medieval society where women could receive formal education. The nuns would learn to read and write, study the scriptures, and engage in theological debates. They would also learn practical skills like gardening, brewing, and bookbinding. In a world where women's roles were largely defined by their relationships to men, the convent offered a different path, a chance to live a life of the mind and the spirit. But even for those women who remained in the secular world, there were opportunities for learning and intellectual growth. Women often played a key role in educating their children, passing on their own knowledge and skills. They might also learn from their husbands, fathers, or brothers, picking up bits and pieces of their trade or craft. And in some cases, women might even take over a family business after the death of their husband, demonstrating their competence and capability in a very public way. Yet, despite their strength and resilience, women in the Middle Ages also faced considerable challenges. Women in the Middle Ages were often perceived as inferior to men in terms of both physical and intellectual abilities. Their roles were predominantly confined to the domestic sphere, leaving them with limited legal rights and social status largely dependent on their husbands or fathers. During times of conflict or crisis, they often bore the brunt of war, famine, and disease, suffering the most. Despite these challenges, women demonstrated remarkable endurance and adaptability, finding ways to navigate societal constraints, carve out spaces for themselves, and assert their identities and agency. In doing so, they significantly shaped the world around them, both in profound and subtle ways. While the lives of women in the Middle Ages were not easy, they were not devoid of rewards. They found warmth and companionship in their families and friends, satisfaction in their work, and joy in the rhythms of nature, the beauty of songs and stories, and the knowledge of their place in a vast tapestry of human experience. As we delve deeper into their lives, we uncover a story of strength, resilience, creativity, adaptability, courage, and determination. This enduring narrative resonates across centuries, echoing in the lives of women today. It is a story that deserves to be told, and as we conclude this chapter, we are left with admiration for these women who navigated a world with few opportunities, demonstrating strength, grace, and resilience. As the hearth's fire dwindles and the moon rises high in the night, we bid them good night, knowing that their stories and spirit continue to live on. As we continue our exploration of women's lives during the medieval period, it is crucial to recognize that this era spanned several centuries and encompassed diverse cultures and societies. So it's not a one-size-fits-all narrative. However, there are common threads and experiences that connect the life stories of women during this era. In the previous section, we explored how women's lives were shaped by their social status and the roles they played within their families. Now, let's shift our focus to the realm of education and intellectual pursuits. During the Middle Ages, education was a privilege reserved for a select few, and women were among the few who could access it. It's important to note that women were not entirely excluded from intellectual endeavors. The avenues for women's education were largely determined by their social status and the institutions available to them. Noble women, for instance, often received education within their households. They were taught essential social graces and skills appropriate for their status, such as managing a household, embroidery, music, and occasionally reading and writing. These were considered the acceptable areas of knowledge for a woman of noble birth, aimed at ensuring her ability to efficiently manage a household and be a gracious hostess. The church also played a significant role in women's education. Convents emerged as one of the few places where women could receive a more comprehensive education. Girls sent to convents, often from noble families, were taught to read and write. They were introduced to Latin, the language of the church, and some even pursued studies in philosophy, theology, and the sciences. These women, known as nuns, often produced enduring works of literature, art, and music. Consider the case of Hildegard of Bingen, a German nun of the 12th century. She was a polymath who made remarkable contributions to music, theology, natural science, and philosophy. Her visionary works and lyrical songs have left a lasting legacy, making her one of the most remarkable figures of the Middle Ages. However, it's crucial to recognize that the intellectual life of women in the Middle Ages extended beyond the nobility and the church. In towns and cities, women held various professions, including teaching. Schools affiliated with cathedrals and monasteries occasionally employed women as teachers. Although these schools primarily catered to boys, they occasionally admitted girls, providing another avenue for women's education. Beyond formal education, women engaged in intellectual pursuits through informal means. Storytelling and folk wisdom, passed down from generation to generation, carried the collective knowledge of women. They possessed knowledge about medicinal herbs, childbirth techniques, and practical solutions to everyday problems. Although this knowledge wasn't recognized as formal education, it was crucial for the functioning of households and communities. Despite these opportunities, it's important to note that the majority of women during the medieval period remained uneducated. Literacy rates among women were significantly lower than among men. The prevailing societal norms and limitations imposed on women's access to education played a significant role in this disparity. However, women who defied these norms and pursued education often left a lasting impact. Their contributions to literature, science, philosophy, and other fields of knowledge are testaments to their intellectual capabilities and resilience. They carved out spaces for themselves in a world that often sought to limit them, leaving a legacy that has endured through the centuries. As we conclude this section and prepare to delve deeper into the world of medieval women, let us remember these women, their stories, and their indomitable spirit. This serves as a reminder of the potential that lies within each individual, waiting to be nurtured and expressed, regardless of the constraints of their time. In the next section, we will explore the roles and experiences of women in the workforce during the medieval period, providing further insight into the diverse experiences of these women. As your eyes grow heavy and your body relaxes into the comforting embrace of your bed, let the stories of these extraordinary women accompany you into the realm of dreams, where you might encounter them in the grand tapestry of history. Contrary to popular belief, not all medieval women lived lives of confinement and hardship, regardless of their social status or geographical location. While societal norms and religious doctrines often limited their opportunities, women in various capacities found ways to navigate these constraints, demonstrating remarkable resilience and resourcefulness. In the realm of work, women engaged in a diverse range of occupations, far beyond the confines of the domestic sphere. While some were involved in tasks directly related to the home and family, such as cooking, cleaning, and child-rearing, many women also contributed economically to their households. They worked in fields, tended to animals, and helped manage family businesses. In urban settings, women found employment in various professions, from brewing and baking to weaving and midwifery. Some even ventured into entrepreneurship, running their own businesses. In the higher echelons of society, noble women held positions of considerable power and influence. They managed large estates, oversaw household staff, and, in the absence of their husbands, exercised power as regents, governing in their stead. Notable examples include Eleanor of Aquitaine and Matilda of Tuscany, who demonstrated exceptional political acumen and leadership skills, proving that women were capable of ruling in a male-dominated world. While education was not universally accessible, it was not entirely out of reach for women either. In monastic communities, nuns received instruction in Latin, scripture studies, and occasionally even sciences, making these institutions significant centers of female learning. In contrast, aristocratic families provided private tutors for their daughters, imparting knowledge in languages, music, and literature. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that life in the Middle Ages was not devoid of hardships for women. Societal norms were deeply rooted in patriarchal values, portraying women as inferior to men both physically and mentally. They were expected to be obedient and subservient, reflected in the limited rights granted to them under the legal system. For instance, women were prohibited from holding public office, and their ability to own and inherit property was severely restricted. Religion also played a role in shaping women's lives, placing them in a subordinate position by emphasizing their roles as wives and mothers. The concept of original sin, associated with the biblical figure of Eve, was used to justify their lower status. Nevertheless, religion also offered avenues for female empowerment. Many women found solace and purpose in religious life, becoming nuns or joining lay religious communities. Figures like Hildegard of Bingen and Julian of Norwich utilized their religious devotion as a platform to express their thoughts and ideas, making substantial contributions to theology and literature. The reality of medieval women's lives was a complex interplay of contrasts. While they faced numerous barriers and challenges, they demonstrated remarkable resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity. They engaged in various pursuits, including work, learning, ruling, and creation, leaving an indelible mark on the world that continues to resonate today. Their stories serve as a testament to women's enduring ability to carve out spaces of autonomy and influence, even in the face of adversity. As we delve deeper into the lives of medieval women, we uncover a rich tapestry of experiences that challenge our preconceived notions. From the humble peasant to the powerful queen, from the devout nun to the skilled artisan, each woman had a unique story to tell. This diverse array of narratives serves as a testament to the varied roles and contributions of women during this period. By exploring these stories, we gain a more nuanced understanding of the medieval world, recognizing and celebrating women's integral role in shaping history. As we delve deeper into the lives of medieval women, it becomes evident that their roles and responsibilities were largely determined by their social status. Women's lives were not uniform. They were a spectrum of experiences influenced by factors such as wealth, birth, marriage, and location. Now, let's explore the lives of women in the upper echelons of society. The nobility, noble women, while still subject to societal limitations, enjoyed a slightly more privileged existence. They were typically educated, albeit in a limited capacity compared to their male counterparts. Their education primarily focused on managing households and estates, courtly etiquette, and reading and writing. Many noble women became patrons of literature and the arts, and some even penned their own works, such as Marie de France, one of the most renowned poets of the 12th century. The primary duty of a noble woman was to bear and raise children, particularly sons who would continue the family line. Marriage was often a political arrangement designed to secure alliances, wealth, or land, with love rarely being a deciding factor. However, there are accounts of affectionate relationships between noble couples, suggesting that emotional bonds could develop over time. As the lady of the manor, a noble woman was responsible for managing the household. This involved overseeing the domestic staff, ensuring the smooth running of the estate, and often managing finances. In the absence of her husband due to war or travel, a medieval noblewoman would assume his responsibilities, effectively managing the estate. These duties demanded significant administrative skills, highlighting the substantial role women played in medieval society's functioning. However, the life of a noblewoman was not without its challenges. Pregnancy and childbirth were perilous, with many women succumbing to complications or even death during childbirth. Noblewomen also faced the threat of violence, especially during periods of political instability. Abductions for political or financial gain were common, and noblewomen were often the targets. Now let's shift our focus to the women of the middle class, the burghers or bourgeoisie. These women were typically the wives or daughters of merchants or artisans. Like noble women, their primary role was to manage the household and raise children. However, they were also deeply involved in their husbands' businesses. They could be found selling goods in the market, managing accounts, or even running the business in their husband's absence. While education was less common among middle-class women, literacy rates were higher than those of peasant women. Middle-class women also had opportunities to work independently. Guilds for various trades allowed women to become members and work as professionals. Some women achieved success in their own right, such as Margaret Kemper, an English mystic and author, and Julian of Norwich, an anchor and one of the first women to write a book in English. Peasant women, on the other hand, had a markedly different existence. Their lives were dictated by the seasons and the demands of the land. They worked long hours in the fields, tended to animals, and managed the household. Despite the grueling nature of their work, peasant women had limited social and economic freedom. Their lives were often characterized by poverty and hardship. Despite the stark differences in their lifestyles, all medieval women shared some common experiences. They lived in a society that valued them less than men and had limited opportunities due to their gender. However, they found ways to exert influence and control over their lives. Whether as a lady of the manor, a guild member, or a peasant, women played a crucial role in the functioning of medieval society. As we continue our journey, we'll delve deeper into the unique roles and experiences of women in medieval times, shedding light on their struggles, achievements, and resilience. So, close your eyes and let the echoes of the past lull you to sleep as we journey further into the heart of medieval womanhood. As we delve deeper into the lives of women during the medieval era, we encounter the often misunderstood realm of women in the workforce. Contrary to popular belief, women during this time were not confined solely to domestic roles. Like the intricate tapestry of history itself, the roles and responsibilities of women during the medieval era were far more varied and complex. Imagine a bustling medieval town with cobblestone streets teeming with activity. Among the vendors selling their wares and craftsmen tending to their trades, you'll find women engaged in various roles. The wives and daughters of tradesmen might assist in the family business, while wealthier women managed servants and oversaw their husbands' estates. Lower-class women often worked alongside their husbands in the fields or tended to animals, facing the physical strain of these tasks for survival. Additionally, women found employment in domestic service, particularly in the homes of the wealthy. They performed a range of tasks from cooking and cleaning to nursing and child-rearing. For women of the middle class, the roles were slightly different. Many of them worked in trades and businesses, contributing to the economic fabric of medieval society. Women in the medieval era were diverse in their professions, ranging from spinners and dyers to bakers, brewers, and even blacksmiths. Some women ran their own businesses, such as alehouses, inns, or shops. Remarkably, a widow could inherit her husband's business and manage it independently, a level of autonomy that was quite unusual for the time. Even noble women had responsibilities beyond mere appearance. They were expected to manage the household, oversee the education of their children, and often run the estate in their husband's absence. Additionally, women played a significant role in social and political networking, influencing their husbands' business dealings and political decisions. Religion also offered women opportunities. Becoming a nun was a respected career choice, often pursued by women seeking education or spiritual fulfillment. In monasteries, nuns could gain literacy and acquire various skills. Some became scribes, illuminating manuscripts, while others served as nurses or teachers. It wasn't uncommon for women to rise to high ranks within religious institutions, such as abbesses who held considerable power and influence. Despite these roles, it's important to acknowledge that women's work was often undervalued compared to men's. They were frequently paid less for the same work, and their contributions were often overlooked or minimized in historical records. However, this should not diminish the fact that women were integral to the medieval workforce, contributing to their families' income and the economy of their towns or cities. Beyond labor, women also played a crucial role in the reproduction and maintenance of social order. Marriage was primarily an economic and political arrangement, often orchestrated by families to secure alliances, consolidate wealth, or enhance social status. Women were generally expected to obey their husbands, bear and raise children, and maintain the household. Despite facing numerous challenges and constraints, women in the medieval ages found ways to exert influence and assert their agency. They worked, managed, created, and endured, shaping and being shaped by the forces of history. Their lives were far from easy, but they were not mere passive observers of their fate. They were active participants in their world. As we delve deeper into the medieval era, we will uncover more about how women navigated the complexities of their time, finding strength and resilience in the face of adversity. The tapestry of history is rich and intricate, and the threads woven by the women of the medieval era are a vital part of that design. Their lives continue to resonate in our world today, reminding us of our shared history and the enduring power of the human spirit. As you drift off to sleep, let your thoughts wander through the streets of a medieval town, following the footsteps of the women who once walked there. We will now explore the realm of medieval women's experiences with education and intellectual pursuits. While it is true that many historical accounts of this period focus on the deeds and exploits of men, it would be a gross oversimplification to assume that women were entirely absent from the intellectual life of the Middle Ages. Education in medieval times was not a universal right. It was a privilege reserved for the wealthy or those in religious orders. However, it is important to note that women were not entirely excluded from this privilege. While formal education was rare for women, it was not unheard of. Daughters of nobility and the upper classes occasionally had the opportunity to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. Women were also taught to manage household affairs, which could be a complex task in a large state. This involved knowledge of accounts, managing servants, and often intricate social protocol. In academia, women mostly remained on the sidelines, but there were exceptions. One notable exception was Hildegard of Bingen, an abbess, mystic, philosopher, and musician. She defied societal norms and made significant contributions to the intellectual discourse of her time. Her holistic approach to health, spirituality, and the natural world was revolutionary for her era and continues to be studied today. She wrote numerous works on diverse subjects, including theology, botany, and music, offering a glimpse into the intellectual capabilities of women during this period. The medieval period also witnessed the flourishing of the tradition of female mystics. Julian of Norwich, an English anchorite, is known for her book Revelations of Divine Love, which is believed to be the first book written in English by a woman. These women, often part of religious orders, explored their spirituality and shared their insights in writings that have become integral to understanding the religious thought of the Middle Ages. In literature, women also made their mark. Marie de France, a poet from the 12th century, is one of the earliest known female poets writing in French and Old English. She wrote Lace, a form of lyrical narrative poetry that often explored courtly love and chivalric adventure. Her works offer a rich tapestry of medieval life, embodying a female perspective that was uncommon in literary works of the time. For many women, education was informal and passed down through generations. Skills such as weaving, brewing, and herbalism were taught from mother to daughter or within communities. Women were the keepers of practical knowledge necessary for everyday survival, and their wisdom often extended well beyond the home. They served as midwives, healers, and wise women, roles that required extensive knowledge of herbs and medicine. Despite the constraints imposed upon them, women of the Middle Ages found ingenious ways to engage in intellectual pursuits. They skillfully navigated societal norms and expectations, discovering loopholes and pushing boundaries to acquire knowledge and express their thoughts. This era witnessed the emergence of formidable, educated women who defied the limitations of their time, demonstrating that the thirst for knowledge and the desire to contribute were not confined to the male domain. As the night descends, let us honor the women who, against all odds, participated in the intellectual life of the Middle Ages. Their stories serve as poignant reminders of the resilience and capacity of the human spirit to seek knowledge even in the most challenging circumstances. As we drift into sleep, let us carry with us the image of these women, huddled over their manuscripts or brewing their healing potions, their minds alive with curiosity and wonder in a world that often sought to confine them. These women, like the stars that begin to twinkle in the night sky, were beacons of light in the vast expanse of history, illuminating paths for the women who would follow in their footsteps. In the subsequent section, we will delve into the roles and occupations of women in medieval society. While many women were confined to their homes, others ventured into the world, assuming roles and responsibilities that defied the societal norms of their time. As you drift off to sleep, let the stories of these remarkable women lull you into a peaceful slumber, their strength and resilience serving as a testament to the indomitable power of the human spirit. As we continue our exploration of the lives of women in medieval times, we arrive at the pivotal role that religion played. The church during this period was not merely a place of worship, it was the epicenter of all life. For women, the church presented various avenues and opportunities. Women who chose to dedicate their lives to God's service lived as nuns in convents. This significant choice meant renouncing worldly possessions, family ties, and the prospect of marriage. Cloistered in their convents, these women led lives of prayer and contemplation, following a strict daily routine that included communal prayer, private meditation, and work that benefited the convent, such as tending to the herb garden, nursing the sick, weaving, and brewing. Education was also a rarity in that era, especially for women. They read and wrote in Latin, copied manuscripts, and created beautiful works of religious art. Women who weren't cloistered had different religious responsibilities. They were expected to attend Mass regularly, observe holy days, and follow the Church's teachings on morality and conduct. They also had the responsibility of educating their children, instilling in them the principles and stories of the Christian faith. However, not all women found their place within the confines of the Church's teachings. Some women were healers, midwives, and herbalists who possessed knowledge passed down through generations. Their work was often viewed with suspicion because it didn't always align with the Church's understanding of the world. Some of these women were even accused of witchcraft, a serious crime that could lead to execution. The Church also had a significant influence on women's legal rights. Canon law, the Church's legal system, had clear positions on issues like marriage, divorce, and inheritance, which profoundly impacted women's lives. While women could own property independently, their legal status was often tied to that of their husband or father. Marriage was considered a sacrament, a sacred bond between a man and a woman. The Church expected women to be obedient to their husbands, who were seen as the spiritual heads of the household. Divorce, although technically possible, was challenging to obtain and carried a significant social stigma. Women who were divorced or widowed often found themselves in precarious situations, relying on the goodwill of male relatives for their survival. Despite these challenges, there were instances of women who wielded considerable power during this period. Queens and noble women frequently acted as regents, ruling in the stead of their underage sons or absent husbands. They managed estates, brokered political alliances, and even led armies. However, their power was often contingent on their relationship with a man, and they faced constant scrutiny and criticism for deviating from the prescribed roles for women. In the realm of commerce, women also played a role. While they were not as prevalent as male merchants or tradesmen, there were women who ran their own businesses. These women were bakers, brewers, weavers, and even moneylenders, often widows who had inherited their husband's business after his death. They faced numerous obstacles, including the reluctance of male merchants to engage in business with them and legal restrictions that limited their ability to enter contracts or borrow money. The lives of women in medieval times were shaped by the church, the law, and societal expectations. They navigated a harsh and unforgiving world, finding ways to survive and even thrive. Their stories serve as a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of women throughout history. As we delve deeper into the medieval world, we uncover a rich tapestry of lives lived with courage and conviction. Over time, the societal norms and regulations of the medieval age began to evolve, and women found themselves facing a different set of expectations. The later Middle Ages witnessed the emergence of a new kind of woman, one who was not confined to the home, but actively engaged in various economic activities. In this era, women emerged as shopkeepers, bakers, brewers, and even money lenders. Although these roles were still limited, they did offer women a degree of financial independence. In towns and cities, women engaged in various trades, including tailoring, candle making, weaving, silkwork, and food production as bakers, brewers, and butchers. They also operated market stalls selling fresh produce and handcrafted goods. The Black Death, which ravaged Europe in the mid-4th century, further expanded women's opportunities. With the high demand for labor due to the loss of many lives, women stepped in to fill the void. However, this increased participation in economic activities did not change the traditional perception of women as fundamentally inferior. Despite their contributions, women were still subjugated and their work undervalued. In many cases, women were paid less than men for doing the same work and faced discriminatory laws and practices. For instance, if a woman committed a crime, her husband was held responsible for her actions. One of the most intriguing developments of the later Middle Ages was the rise of women as money lenders. With their husbands away fighting in wars or on crusades, women took charge of the family's finances. They lent money to those in need, charging interest on the loans. This practice not only provided women with a source of income, but also gave them a certain degree of power within their communities. However, these women were often criticized and suspected of being shrewd and manipulative, and their activities were regarded with distrust. Beyond their economic roles, women also played crucial roles in the religious life of the Middle Ages. Many women joined religious orders, becoming nuns and dedicating their lives to prayer and service. Some women even founded their own religious communities, such as Hildegard of Bingen and Clare of Assisi. Revered for their sanctity and wisdom, their writings have profoundly influenced Christian theology. However, even within the church, women faced discrimination. They were barred from authority and relegated to background roles. Despite these restrictions, some women rose above them and made their voices heard. For instance, Julian of Norwich, a mystic and theologian, left a lasting impact on Christian thought through her writings. Towards the end of the Middle Ages, women's status began to decline. The printing press led to job losses traditionally held by women, and the Reformation shifted societal attitudes towards women. The ideal of the obedient, submissive wife became more prevalent, confining women to the home. Despite these setbacks, women continued to play vital roles in society as mothers, wives, and workers. They contributed to the economy and spiritual life of their communities, facing adversity with resilience and tenacity. Though their stories are often overlooked, they are an integral part of the rich tapestry of the Middle Ages. Women's lives were shaped by a complex interplay of societal norms, religious beliefs, and economic realities. Their experiences varied and diverse, reflecting the multifaceted nature of medieval society. From noble women in castles to peasant women in fields, from nuns in convents to merchants in shops, each woman had her own unique story to tell. Despite living in a time of hardship and inequality, these women found ways to assert their agency and make their mark on the world. As we embark on our journey into the captivating realm of the Middle Ages, we explore the topic of education and learning for women. It's crucial to acknowledge that our understanding of this era is often distorted by the scarcity of written records from women themselves. Most of what we know comes from religious texts, legal documents, or accounts written by men. Despite these limitations, historians have managed to gain a remarkable insight into women's education during the medieval period. Contrary to popular belief, women were not entirely excluded from learning, but their access to education was heavily influenced by their social status and the prevailing attitudes of the time. In the early Middle Ages, the Church emerged as the primary provider of education. Monastic schools, run by monks and nuns, served as the main centers of learning. Noble families often sent their daughters to these institutions to receive a basic education. These girls learned to read and write in Latin and were taught the Psalms and other religious texts. However, their education extended beyond the spiritual realm. They were also taught practical skills such as weaving and embroidery, which were considered appropriate for women. As we transition into the High Middle Ages, the rise of universities brought about significant changes in the landscape of education. While these institutions were predominantly male-dominated, women were not entirely barred from these prestigious seats of learning. In fact, there are records of a few exceptional women who defied societal norms and pursued higher education. These were rare cases that often required extraordinary circumstances, such as the support of a powerful male relative or the willingness to embrace a life of celibacy. For the majority of women, however, education remained a domestic affair. Girls were primarily taught by their mothers and other female relatives, acquiring the skills necessary to manage a household. They learned to spin and weave, preserve food, brew ale, manage servants, and oversee the family's finances. These skills were not considered less important than the academic knowledge taught in schools. In fact, they were often seen as more valuable because they directly contributed to the survival and prosperity of families. Education for women was not just about acquiring practical skills, it was also about understanding societal norms and expectations. Women were taught their societal roles and the behaviors expected of them, particularly the virtues of chastity, obedience, and silence. These lessons were reinforced through religious teachings that emphasized the significance of these virtues for women. Despite these restrictions, women found ways to express themselves and contribute to society. They engaged in creative pursuits such as the arts and crafts, letter writing, and the creation of household goods. Some women rose to prominence in their communities, using their knowledge and skills to influence societal norms and values. In urban areas, women had more opportunities for learning and self-expression. They could join guilds that provided a sense of community and offered avenues for learning and advancement. Some women even became successful business owners, managing their own shops and trading goods. These women were often widows who had inherited their husbands' businesses, but there were also cases of unmarried women or wives who ran businesses independently of their husbands. As we conclude this section, it's crucial to remember that while the Middle Ages were a period of restrictions and limitations for women, they were also a time of resilience and adaptability. Women navigated the constraints of their society, using their knowledge and skills to carve out a place for themselves. They may not have had the same opportunities as men, but they were not passive observers of their lives. Instead, they were active participants, shaping their world and leaving a legacy that continues to inspire us today. As we settle into a comfortable silence, let the soothing rhythm of history lull you into a peaceful sleep. In the next section, we will continue our journey into the lives of medieval women, exploring their roles in religion and spirituality. Until then, let the tales of these resilient women inspire dreams of strength and perseverance. Good night. As we delve deeper into the lives of medieval women, we cannot overlook their significant role in the religious sphere. The church was a fundamental institution during the Middle Ages, and for women, it offered some of the few opportunities for literacy, influence, and a degree of independence. In this context, it's essential to highlight the lives of nuns. The convent was one of the few places where women could receive an education, allowing them to learn to read and write, as well as study theology, music, and the sciences. Nuns became scribes, illuminating manuscripts with delicate precision and artistry, creating some of the most beautiful medieval manuscripts we have today. In contrast to the limited opportunities outside, the convent provided a degree of freedom. As nuns, women could hold positions of authority, become abbesses, and manage large estates, exercising a degree of power and control that was often denied to their secular counterparts. However, this life was not for everyone. The vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience that nuns took were demanding, and the strict discipline and austere lifestyle could be harsh and unyielding. But for some women, the spiritual rewards outweighed the physical hardships, finding in the convent a sanctuary from the challenges of the world outside. It's also worth mentioning the Bains, a lay religious movement that emerged in the 12th century. These women lived in semi-monastic communities, dedicating their lives to prayer and charitable works without taking formal vows. The Beguines, particularly active in the Low Countries and Germany, offered women an alternative to marriage or the convent. They provided a community for women to live and work together. Women also played a crucial role in promoting religion within their households. As wives and mothers, they were responsible for the spiritual well-being of their families. They taught their children about the faith, ensured their families attended Mass, and observed religious festivals and fasts. In a more mystical sense, the Middle Ages witnessed an increase in female mystics and visionaries. Women like Julian of Norwich, Margaret Kemp, and Hildegard of Bingen have left us with profound and moving accounts of their religious experiences. Their writings offer valuable insights into the spiritual lives of medieval women. However, women faced limitations within the church. They could not become priests or bishops, and their voices were often marginalized. Women who deviated from traditional boundaries faced harsh consequences. For example, Marguerite Porete, a Béarn from northern France, was burned at the stake for heresy in 1310. Despite these restrictions, many women found ways to shape their religious lives. They carved out spaces for spiritual expression and leadership. In the next section, we will explore the roles women played in the economy and professions during the Middle Ages. We will delve into the lives of alewives, midwives, and merchant women, shedding light on another aspect of women's lives during this period. As you drift into sleep, let the stories of these remarkable women linger in your thoughts, painting a vivid picture of a world that was both challenging and full of possibilities. As we delve deeper into the Middle Ages, let us explore the intricate tapestry of women's lives during this era, a narrative as diverse and rich as the medieval landscape itself. Women's roles varied widely, from noble women to peasants, from the secluded life of the convent to the bustling streets of medieval cities. Marriage stood as a defining aspect of women's lives in the medieval period, shaping their destinies profoundly. For noble women, marriage often served as a political tool to forge alliances between powerful families. These women were typically wed at a young age, sometimes as young as 12, the legal marriage age during the Middle Ages. These unions were not driven by love or attraction, but by the strategic interests of their families. Noble women were expected to bear children, particularly sons, to perpetuate their husband's lineage and manage the household, which could be as extensive as a small village. Peasant women, on the other hand, married a bit later, usually in their late teens or early 20s. Their marriages were more likely to be based on mutual consent and economic considerations. Peasant women typically married men from their own social class, and their lives revolved around the arduous work of sustaining a subsistence level of existence. They worked alongside their husbands in the fields, tended to animals, maintained the home, and cared for children. Despite the relative freedom peasant women had in choosing their husbands, their lives were far from easy. The daily grind of medieval life was harsh and unrelenting. Women were expected to bear many children due to high infant mortality rates and the need for additional hands for work. This constant cycle of childbirth and labor took a significant toll on women's health. However, it's important to note that not all women in the Middle Ages were confined to the roles of wives and mothers. Some women chose or were chosen to lead a religious life in convents. These women, known as nuns, dedicated their lives to prayer and contemplation, living secluded lives away from the outside world. During the Middle Ages, convents were one of the few places where women could receive an education. Nuns studied Latin, scripture, and sometimes philosophy and natural sciences. Some convents even became centers of cultural and intellectual life, with nuns producing beautiful manuscripts and participating in theological debates. However, life in the convent was not without its hardships. Nuns took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, renouncing worldly pleasures and dedicating their lives to God. They lived in communal dormitories, prayed several times a day, and performed manual labor. Despite these challenges, the convent offered a degree of autonomy and intellectual stimulation that was rare for women in the Middle Ages. In the bustling medieval cities, women played a crucial role in the economic life of the community. They were integral to trades such as brewing, baking, and textile production. Some women even ran their own businesses, managing staff and negotiating contracts. Despite the many restrictions placed on women during the Middle Ages, these examples highlight the diverse roles women played and the spaces they carved out for themselves. Their lives were shaped by the social, economic, and religious norms of the time, but within these constraints, they were able to exert influence and shape their own destinies. As we continue to explore the intricate tapestry of women's lives in the Middle Ages, we will uncover more about their roles, challenges, and triumphs. From noble women to peasants, from nuns to city dwellers, each had a unique story to tell, leaving a lasting impact on the world they inhabited. Let us allow the gentle rhythm of their lives to lull us into a deeper understanding of their world, and may we find a peaceful slumber in doing so. In the Middle Ages, women's roles in society were largely defined by their marital status or religious affiliation. Marriage was a fundamental aspect of a woman's life, with most girls being betrothed by the age of 12 or 13. Betroths, similar to modern engagements but with greater commitment, were legally binding contracts that could only be broken under specific circumstances. Once betrothed, women moved in with their husbands' families and began learning the duties and responsibilities of a wife. Marriages during this time were often arranged for economic or political reasons, with love not considered a prerequisite. Romantic affection was often viewed with suspicion, but genuine affection and passion existed, as evidenced by historical accounts and literature from the period. Within marriage, women often held the most power and influence, managing the household, overseeing servants, maintaining finances, and ensuring the welfare of children. In the absence of their husbands, women could act as their representatives in legal and financial matters, granting them a degree of autonomy and authority, albeit within limited scope. However, not all women were destined for marriage. Some chose religious life, becoming nuns or abbesses. Convent life offered an alternative to traditional roles, providing women with education and spiritual development. Despite strict rules, many found freedom and autonomy within the cloistered walls. The Middle Ages also witnessed the rise of female mystics. Women in the Middle Ages were not passive or powerless. They actively participated in their societies, contributing to the economy, the church, and the family. They navigated the challenges and opportunities presented by their time with strength, resilience, and resourcefulness. Life for women in the Middle Ages was a complex interplay of societal expectations, religious beliefs, and personal agency. While their roles and opportunities were significantly constrained by the patriarchal norms of the time, they found ways to exercise power and influence within their given spheres. Whether as wives, mothers, nuns, mystics, workers, or warriors, women in the Middle Ages were integral to the functioning and survival of their societies. They were the unsung heroes of their time. As we delve deeper into our exploration of medieval women's lives, we find ourselves in the bustling markets of towns and cities. These vibrant centers of commerce and social interaction were where many medieval women found their place in society. The marketplace was a lively place, filled with the aromas of freshly baked bread, ripe fruits, and various goods. Contrary to popular belief, many medieval women were active participants in their town's economic life. They sold everything from food and drink to textiles, and even services like laundry and nursing. Women were bakers, brewers, butchers, and candlestick makers, and some even managed inns or taverns. These women, often widows, were respected and integral members of their communities, capable of running businesses and maintaining households. A notable example is Marjorie Kemp, a 15th-century businesswoman who ran a brewery and a grain mill. Marjorie's story is unique because she not only managed these enterprises, but also wrote about her experiences, providing a rare glimpse into the life of a working woman in the Middle Ages. Her tale highlights the challenges she faced, her struggles with societal expectations, and her unwavering determination. While it's true that many women in the Middle Ages were illiterate, Marjorie Kemp's story demonstrates that some women were literate and made significant contributions to literature. Women like Julian of Norwich, Hildegard of Bingen, and Christine de Pizan authored works that have become classics of medieval literature. These women explored religion, philosophy, and the plight of women in society, challenging the traditional roles and expectations of their time. These women were certainly not the norm. Most women, especially those from lower classes, had lives dominated by work. A peasant woman's day would begin at dawn, involving tasks like tending to animals, making cheese and butter, brewing ale, cooking, cleaning, and caring for her children. It was a relentless, physically demanding lifestyle with little time for rest or leisure. Despite these hardships, women found ways to express their creativity and skill. While they may not have created grand tapestries or elaborate sculptures, the everyday items they crafted, from the clothes they stitched to the bread they baked, were infused with their artistry. The intricate embroidery on a tunic, the pattern on a ceramic pot, or the design on a loaf of bread all bore the mark of their makers. In the Middle Ages, women also played a crucial role in healthcare. They were often the primary caregivers in their families, tending to the sick and the elderly. Many women became skilled in using herbs and natural remedies, and their knowledge was passed down through generations. Some women, like Hildegard of Bingen, combined their healing skills with their religious vocations, becoming renowned for their knowledge of medicinal plants and their ability to heal. Despite these contributions, women in the Middle Ages faced a society largely patriarchal. Laws and customs often favored men, and women had limited rights and freedoms. A woman's place was largely determined by her marital status, and her options were often limited to marriage, the convent, or in rare cases, a life of solitary struggle. Despite these challenges, women in the Middle Ages displayed remarkable resilience and adaptability. They found ways to express their creativity, contribute to their communities, and carve out a place for themselves in a world that was often hostile to their ambitions. Their stories, while often overlooked in the grand narrative of history, are a testament to their strength and endurance. They remind us that behind the stereotypes and misconceptions lies a rich tapestry of lives lived with courage, determination, and grace. As we delve deeper into the lives of medieval women, it's crucial to acknowledge the profound influence of religion. The Church, the heart and soul of medieval life, wielded immense power over every aspect of existence, including the lives of women. Religion permeated not only the spiritual realm, but also the political, social, and cultural spheres. In the Middle Ages, women were expected to be pious and devoted to their faith. From an early age, they were taught the virtues of modesty, obedience, and patience, emphasizing the importance of prayer and devotion. Additionally, they were encouraged to be charitable and care for the less fortunate, viewing this as a path to spiritual salvation. Consequently, many women chose to dedicate their lives to God and service by becoming nuns. Convents provided a refuge for women who were unmarried or could not afford a dowry. Within these religious institutions, women had access to education, something often denied to them in the wider world. They learned to read and write, studied the Bible, and some even became accomplished scholars. One notable example of such a woman is Hildegard of Bingen, a German nun of the 12th century who made significant contributions as an influential writer, composer, philosopher, and visionary. However, the Church also established many societal norms and expectations for women. It propagated the notion of women as the weaker sex, both physically and morally, necessitating male guidance and protection. Women were often depicted as either saints or sinners, leaving little room for anything in between. These stereotypes reinforced the subordinate status of women and limited their opportunities. Despite these restrictions, some women managed to exert power and influence within the Church. While they couldn't become priests or bishops, they could become abbesses, the female equivalent of an abbot. Abbesses in charge of convents wielded considerable authority over their communities. They possessed the power to own and manage property, make legal decisions, and even excommunicate individuals. However, the role of an abbess was not without its challenges. They were expected to embody virtue and enforce the strict rules of the convent. Additionally, they had to navigate the intricate politics of the church and maintain cordial relations with male church officials. Despite these obstacles, many women thrived in this role, using their position to make a positive impact on their communities. The church also provided avenues for women to engage in local parish life. They could join religious guilds, groups of laypeople dedicated to a specific saint or cause. Furthermore, they participated in religious festivals and processions, which held significant importance in the medieval calendar. Through these activities, women contributed to the spiritual well-being of their communities and found a sense of purpose and belonging. It is crucial to acknowledge that not all women in the Middle Ages were devoutly religious. Some were skeptical of the church and its teachings, while others faced accusations of heresy or witchcraft. These women endured persecution, and in some instances even execution. The church's stance towards these women sheds light on the darker aspects of medieval religion and its profound influence on women's lives. In conclusion, the church played a pivotal role in the lives of medieval women. It offered opportunities for education, service, and leadership, yet it also imposed stringent norms and expectations. Women demonstrated remarkable resilience and ingenuity in navigating this complex landscape, carving out spaces of autonomy and influence within a patriarchal system. As we delve deeper into the Middle Ages, we will explore further the ways in which women navigated their place in this captivating period of history. As the night envelops us, let these stories of resilience and strength guide you into a peaceful slumber. As the night sky deepens and tranquility settles in, we delve deeper into the lives of women during the medieval era. We've explored various aspects of their daily lives, societal roles, religious practices, and economic contributions. Now, we embark on a journey into a significant aspect of medieval life: marriage and family. During the Middle Ages, marriage was not a personal choice, but an institution designed to maintain social and economic order. This was true for both men and women, but the impact was different for each sex. Women, especially those of noble birth, were often married off at a young age to solidify alliances, settle disputes, or enhance their family's economic and social standing. While the bride's consent was technically required, it was often obtained through pressure or manipulation. Unlike the romantic notions of today, medieval marriages were typically strategic arrangements. Love was not a prerequisite. It was hoped that it might develop over time. The concept of courtly love, a romantic ideal that extolled chivalry and passion, was largely confined to literature and the arts, and had little impact on the reality of marriage during this era. Upon marriage, a woman's primary duty was to bear children. The high infant mortality rate and the need for heirs meant that women were often pregnant. In addition to childbearing, women were expected to manage the household, which included cooking, cleaning, supervising servants, and managing finances and estate affairs in her husband's absence. Despite the constraints and challenges faced by medieval women, they were not passive or powerless. They navigated these societal expectations and made significant contributions to their families and communities. Women held influential positions within households, their work crucial for family survival and prosperity. Some wielded power in other ways, like widows inheriting property and titles, wielding considerable influence. The church also offered opportunities despite its patriarchal nature. Women could become nuns, studying, writing, and engaging in intellectual and spiritual pursuits in convents often denied in the secular world. Ultimately, medieval women's lives were complex and varied, shaped by social status, location, and circumstances. They faced challenges but navigated complexities. As we delve deeper, let's reflect on their resilience, adaptability, and strength. Their stories, often hidden, are part of our shared past. Exploring them offers a nuanced understanding of a misunderstood era. Each piece of knowledge connects us to the past and provides insights into the present. As you drift into sleep, imagine the castles, markets, fields, forests, bustling households, and quiet convents. Picture the women who lived, worked, and dreamed within these spaces, their lives different from ours, shared hopes, fears, and desires that shape our world today. Let these stories guide you into peaceful slumber and awaken you with a deeper appreciation of our shared human history. In our exploration of women's lives during medieval times, we've delved into various societal roles and expectations. We've examined the lives of noble women and peasant women, uncovering the harsh realities of their daily existence. As we journey deeper into history, we now turn our attention to the topic of love, marriage, and family life. Love in the medieval era was a multifaceted concept. It encompassed romantic ideals, practical necessities, and societal duties. For women, it often involved a complex negotiation between personal feelings, societal expectations, and family obligations. In some cases, marriages were arranged by families to secure political alliances or economic advantages. In other instances, they were the result of mutual affection and personal choice. Despite the prevalence of arranged marriages among the upper classes, contemporary literature and historical records suggest that love and affection were not uncommon in medieval marriages. Once married, a woman's primary responsibilities were to manage the household and bear children. In noble families, these duties could be extensive and intricate, involving the management of vast estates, servants, and intricate family politics. For peasant women, these tasks were more immediate and physical, requiring hard labor in the fields and the home. Despite these differences, women in both classes were expected to be obedient to their husbands, a societal expectation enforced by law and custom. Childbearing held immense importance in medieval society. Women were expected to produce heirs, particularly in the upper classes, where the continuation of the family line was crucial for political and economic reasons. They were also expected to provide for the physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being of their children, encompassing nursing, nurturing, education, and discipline. In the context of family life, women in the medieval age also held a significant spiritual role. They were regarded as the moral compass of the family, entrusted with instilling Christian values in their children and preserving the spiritual well-being of the household. This role was significantly influenced by the Church, which placed a strong emphasis on women's piety and moral virtue. The Church also played a crucial role in shaping societal attitudes towards women and marriage, promoting the notion of marriage as a sacred union with the woman as a submissive partner. However, it also provided women with certain protections, such as the right to consent to marriage and the right to own property in their own name. Nevertheless, women's rights and freedoms were severely restricted compared to men. They were subject to their husband's authority and had limited legal recourse in cases of abuse or mistreatment. This was particularly true for women from lower social classes who had fewer resources and less social standing to protect them. As we drift off into the comforting embrace of sleep, it is important to remember the bravery and resilience of these women. They navigated a world that was often harsh and unforgiving, carving out their own spaces of love, family, and faith within it. Despite the limitations imposed upon them, they found ways to express their individuality, desires, and dreams. And in doing so, they laid the foundation for the freedoms and opportunities that women enjoy today. As we transition into the next section, we will explore the fascinating world of women's work during the medieval period. From bustling markets to serene monasteries, we will uncover the various ways in which women contributed to the economic and cultural life of their societies. But for now, let us rest and rejuvenate, secure in the knowledge that we are continuing our journey through history together. Good night, dear listener, and sweet dreams. As we delve deeper into the lives of women during the medieval period, we now focus on a crucial yet often overlooked aspect of their existence: the profound influence of religion and spirituality. The Church, a central pillar of medieval society, played a pivotal role in shaping women's lives. It not only provided spiritual guidance, but also regulated social norms and moral standards. While the Church taught that women, like men, were created in the image of God and capable of achieving salvation, it simultaneously portrayed them as weaker, more prone to sin, and in need of protection. This belief was rooted in interpretations of the Bible, particularly the story of Adam and Eve, where Eve's creation from Adam's rib suggested a subordinate status. The tale of Eve succumbing to the serpent's temptation and causing the fall of man further reinforced women's perceived moral weakness. Despite these negative stereotypes, the Church also revered the Virgin Mary as the Mother of God, offering a positive yet unattainable model of womanhood. Women were expected to diligently observe religious practices, with prayer punctuating their daily lives. They were also entrusted with instilling Christian values in their children. Many women found solace and a sense of purpose in their faith, especially given the harsh realities of medieval life. The Church provided hope and reassurance, promising eternal life in heaven for those who adhered to God's laws. However, the Church's influence extended beyond the spiritual realm. It emerged as a formidable political and economic entity, possessing vast amounts of land and wealth. This power was predominantly held by men, with women largely excluded from positions of authority. Women were barred from becoming priests, bishops, or popes, and were generally prohibited from delivering sermons or administering sacraments. Despite the restrictions imposed on women during the Middle Ages, some managed to carve out influential roles within the Church. Convents provided one of the few opportunities for women to acquire an education and escape the confines of marriage and motherhood. Nuns, akin to monks, took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They dedicated their lives to prayer and contemplation, while also engaging in practical work such as nursing the sick, teaching, and creating manuscripts. Some nuns ascended to the position of abbesses, wielding significant power and responsibility within their religious communities. Additionally, numerous notable female mystics emerged during the Middle Ages, women who claimed to have direct personal experiences of God. Figures like Julian of Norwich and Hildegard of Bingen authored influential theological works and were esteemed for their profound spiritual insights. Their writings offer a valuable glimpse into the spiritual lives of medieval women, showcasing their capacity for profound theological reflection and their yearning for a personal connection with God. Contrary to the limitations imposed upon them, women in the Middle Ages were not passive recipients of church teachings. They navigated their spiritual journeys through various avenues. Whether it was the relative freedom of the convent, the mystical pursuit of a direct connection with God, or the everyday piety of their homes, their stories serve as a testament to the fact that even within the constraints of a male-dominated society, women have consistently found ways to assert their agency and shape their own experiences. As we delve deeper into our exploration, we will examine another crucial aspect of women's lives during the Middle Ages: their roles in the world of work. However, for now, let this image of the medieval woman as a spiritual being navigating the intricacies of faith and morality within the confines of a male-dominated church inspire your dreams and thoughts as you drift into a restful sleep. As we delve deeper into the experiences of women during the medieval era, we find ourselves in the realm of medicine, healthcare, and childbirth. It's crucial to recognize that during this time, the distinction between the spiritual and the physical was not as pronounced as it is today. Many medical practices were intertwined with religion and superstition. Women played a significant role in healthcare during the medieval period. They were often the primary caregivers within their households, a role that extended to the broader community, especially in rural areas where professional medical assistance was scarce. Women employed a combination of herbs, prayer, and practical knowledge to tend to the sick. However, in urban settings, the professional role of the healer began to be dominated by men, relegating women to assisting in surgeries or acting as midwives. Speaking of midwives, childbirth during the medieval period was a particularly perilous endeavor. The high maternal mortality rate was attributed to complications during delivery and the lack of understanding about hygiene. The birthing process was a communal event, often involving female relatives and neighbors led by a trained midwife. Midwives' knowledge was passed down through generations rather than being imparted through formal education. An intriguing aspect of medieval medicine was the belief in wise women. These women were believed to possess special knowledge or powers to heal. They were often older women who were both respected and feared. They were considered to be in touch with the spiritual realm and could use this connection to alleviate physical ailments. Beyond physical health, mental health was also a concern during the medieval period. While it wasn't understood in the same way as we do today, conditions that we now recognize as depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder were often attributed to spiritual or demonic influence. Women's lives during the medieval period were marked by both hardship and resilience. While opportunities for education were limited, with most women being illiterate and those who could read and write typically belonging to the nobility or the church, some women, particularly those in religious orders, achieved remarkable levels of education. They studied art, music, and literature, and some even wrote influential theological works. Despite these restrictions, women found ways to influence and shape their world. They were skilled in practical skills such as herbalism, weaving, brewing, and more, and played crucial roles within their communities as peacemakers, mediators, and counselors. As we delve deeper into the period spanning from the 5th to the 15th century, we discover that the lives of women during these times were far from homogeneous. Their experiences and roles were significantly shaped by their social status, geographical location, and the prevailing cultural norms of the time. Women in the medieval period held diverse roles, encompassing motherhood, marriage, and sisterhood. They also ventured into business ownership, healing, and farming. These roles were often dictated by marital status and lineage. Unmarried women, including widows, enjoyed greater legal rights compared to their married counterparts. They possessed the ability to own property, enter into contracts, and even establish businesses. These roles played a crucial role in the economic fabric of society. In contrast, married women were expected to bear and raise children, manage household affairs, and support their husbands' occupations. They had fewer legal rights due to the doctrine of cover, which asserted that a woman was covered by her husband's identity and thus lacked a separate legal existence. However, this did not render them inactive or insignificant. On the contrary, they were instrumental in managing their households, often overseeing servants, handling finances, and tending to agricultural responsibilities. Women of noble birth led vastly different lives from those of the lower classes. They were typically educated, often in convents, and expected to be well-versed in social etiquette. These women had more leisure time and were frequently involved in political matters. They could act as regents for their underage sons and wielded significant influence over court politics. In stark contrast, peasant women had limited time for leisure or education. Their lives were consumed by labor-intensive work. They worked alongside their husbands in the fields, tended to animals, brewed beer, cooked, cleaned, and cared for children. Despite the hardships they faced, they were indispensable to the survival of their families and the broader community. Religion held a significant influence on the lives of medieval women. The church offered women opportunities that were not available in secular society. Women could become nuns, gaining an education and escaping the traditional roles of wife and mother. Some women even achieved high status within the church, such as Hildegard of Bingen, a renowned abbess, writer, composer, and philosopher. However, the church also imposed strictures on women, propagating the idea of women as the weaker sex, both physically and morally. Women were seen as the daughters of Eve, blamed for humanity's original sin. This conception of women as inherently sinful contributed to their marginalization and persecution, particularly during the witch trials of the later Middle Ages. The Middle Ages also witnessed significant advancements in medicine, many of which were related to women's health. Midwives played a crucial role in this field, often serving as the primary healthcare providers for women and participating in all stages of childbirth. Despite their importance, they were sometimes viewed with suspicion, and their practices often clashed with the Church's teachings. In conclusion, life for women in the Middle Ages was a complex interplay of roles, expectations, and opportunities. Despite the challenges they faced, women navigated their world and left their mark on history. They were not passive observers, but active participants shaping and being shaped by their surroundings. As we delve deeper into history, we discover that their stories transcend the Middle Ages, encompassing the human experience in all its complexity and diversity. Our journey through history leads us to the medieval period, a time of knights, castles, and chivalry. However, beyond these romanticized images lies the reality of everyday life, particularly for women. As we explore the intricacies of medieval womanhood, let us transport ourselves to the cobblestone streets, bustling marketplaces, and hushed whispers of the cloisters. The term medieval encompasses a vast expanse of time and diverse cultures. spanning from the 5th to the 15th century, the medieval period, also known as the Middle Ages, encompassed all of Europe. Consequently, women's experiences during this era varied significantly based on their geographical location, social status, and the specific time period. At the dawn of the Middle Ages, the social structure was predominantly feudal. This hierarchical system placed the king at the apex, followed by the nobility, knights, and clergy, with peasants at the base. Naturally, women's roles and responsibilities were largely dictated by their position within this hierarchy. Noble women, while privileged, often found their lives strictly regulated. They were expected to manage households, bear children, and support their husbands. Additionally, they were expected to uphold the family's social standing through their behavior and manners. Despite these restrictions, noble women could wield considerable power. In the absence of their husbands, they could manage estates, oversee serfs, and even defend their homes. Some, like Helena of Aquitaine, rose to become influential political figures in their own right. Knights' wives and daughters shared similar responsibilities with their noble counterparts, albeit with fewer resources. They acquired skills such as weaving, brewing, and animal husbandry to support their families. Peasant women arguably endured the most challenging lives. They worked tirelessly, tending to fields, caring for livestock, and managing household tasks. Childbirth was a perilous event, with many women succumbing to complications. Despite these hardships, peasant women formed the backbone of the medieval economy, significantly contributing to agricultural production. In contrast to the secular world, the church presented a distinct path for women. While the church upheld traditional gender roles, it also offered opportunities for women to lead lives of devotion and service. Women could become nuns, dedicating their lives to prayer and charity. They could also become mystics, theologians, or anchors, living a life of seclusion for spiritual purposes. The Middle Ages also witnessed the emergence of bedtines, lay religious women who resided in semi-monastic communities. Unlike nuns, bedtines did not take lifelong vows, granting them the flexibility to leave the community if they chose to marry or for any other reason. Education was not a common privilege for women during this era. Noble women might receive some education, often from private tutors or learned family members. They were typically taught to read and write, and sometimes even learned Latin. On the other hand, peasant women were largely illiterate. Despite these limitations, some women rose to prominence for their intellectual pursuits. Hildegard of Bingen, a nun, was a prolific writer, composer, philosopher, and visionary. Julian of Norwich, an anchor, authored the earliest surviving book in the English language, written by a woman, Revelations of Divine Love. The medieval period was a time of contrasts for women. While they faced numerous restrictions and hardships, they also discovered ways to exert power, express their spirituality, and contribute to their societies. As we delve deeper into this exploration, let yourself be guided by the stories of these women and their enduring spirit. In the medieval period, a woman's primary role was in the home, where she managed the household and raised the children. This role was considered both a duty and a privilege, and women often took great pride in maintaining a well-ordered home, cooking, and caring for the family. Despite these domestic responsibilities, women in the medieval era were actively involved in various aspects of societal life, including commerce, politics, and even warfare. Within the home, women were responsible for a diverse range of tasks, many of which demanded considerable skill. These included baking, brewing, weaving, sewing, and maintaining the family's herb garden. Additionally, women cared for animals, milked cows, and tended to poultry. In rural areas, they also engaged in sowing and harvesting crops. Despite the demanding nature of these tasks, many women found immense satisfaction in their work and played a crucial role in the family's economy. In towns and cities, women were equally significant contributors to the medieval economy. They often ran their own businesses, selling goods in markets, or providing services like laundry and brewing. Some women even achieved wealth and became successful merchants, trading in textiles, spices, and precious metals. These respected women wielded considerable influence within their communities. Women also held a prominent position in the political landscape of the medieval world. They could inherit property and titles, and frequently acted as regents for their underage sons or absent husbands. Some women rose to positions of immense power, such as Elelena of Aquitaine, who reigned as Queen of both France and England, and Matilda of Tuscany, a key figure in Italian politics. During times of war, women also played a role. Some, like Joan of Arc, took up arms and led armies into battle. Others, like Bangara of Navarre, accompanied their husbands on crusades and managed their lands in their absence. Religion was another significant aspect of women's lives in the medieval era. Many women chose to dedicate their lives to prayer and contemplation by entering the church as nuns. Others, like Hildegard of Bingen, rose to prominence as influential theologians and spiritual leaders. While education was generally inaccessible to women during the medieval era, there were exceptions. Some noble women received education from tutors in their homes, learning to read and write and studying subjects like history and philosophy. A few women even became scholars, writing books and treatises on various subjects. Despite the diverse roles women played in medieval society, it's crucial to remember that it was still a patriarchal society. Women were generally considered inferior to men and often subject to their husband's authority. However, this didn't mean women were powerless. They often found ways to exert influence and achieve their goals, whether through diplomacy, cunning, or sheer charisma. The lives of women in the medieval period were intricate and varied, influenced by their social status, family circumstances, and the broader cultural and political context. They faced numerous challenges, but also had opportunities for influence and accomplishment. Their stories offer a captivating glimpse into a world vastly different from our own, yet strikingly similar in many ways. As we explore the rich tapestry of medieval women's lives, we delve into the realm of women in the workforce. A common misconception is that women during this era were confined to their homes, solely engaged in household chores. In reality, women actively participated in the medieval economy, often managing their own businesses and trades. Consider the alehouse, a ubiquitous establishment in medieval towns. Brewing and selling ale was a trade predominantly held by women, known as alewives. These women possessed intimate knowledge of fermentation processes and were skilled entrepreneurs. While men were away at war or working in the fields, alewives ensured a steady supply of ale. In a time before modern sanitation, ale was safer to drink than water, making it an essential task for women. Despite facing criticism and suspicion, often depicted as deceitful or immoral in contemporary literature and art, their economic contribution was undeniable. Women were also heavily involved in textile production. Spinning, weaving, and sewing were considered women's work, and many women spun wool into yarn at home, a task so common that it became a general metaphor for women's work. However, beyond the home, professional female weavers and seamstresses existed. Some even ran their own textile workshops, managing apprentices and journeymen just like their male counterparts. In the bustling markets of medieval towns and cities, women were a common sight. Many were market sellers, hawking everything from food to fabric. They set up their stalls in the market square, shouting out the quality of their goods to anyone who would listen. These women had to be shrewd negotiators capable of haggling with the best of them. Additionally, in an era without standardized weights and measures, they needed a keen eye to ensure they weren't being cheated. Women's work extended beyond these traditionally female occupations. Records show that women worked in a wide variety of trades, including baking, butchering, and fishmongering. Some women worked in metal trades as blacksmiths, silversmiths, and potter. Others were employed in construction, hauling water and bricks for the men who built the great cathedrals and castles of the era. Not all women were workers, though. There were also women of wealth and power. Noble women managed vast estates in their husband's absence, making decisions about crops, tenants, and finances. They were responsible for the welfare of the people living on their lands, and their decisions could mean the difference between prosperity and famine. These women were skilled administrators and diplomats, navigating the intricate social and political landscape of the medieval world. They also found opportunities within the church, some becoming nuns dedicated to prayer and service. Convents offered a life of relative freedom and intellectual stimulation, where women could study, write, and engage in scholarly debates. Notable figures like Hildegard of Bingen, a German nun renowned as a composer, philosopher, and visionary, emerged from this environment. However, life for these working women was not always easy. They were paid less than men, and their work was often undervalued. Restrictions limited their ability to own property or enter into contracts, and their worth was frequently defined by their ability to bear children. Despite these challenges, they persevered, carving out lives of dignity and purpose. As we reflect on the lives of these medieval women, we are reminded of the diverse and complex experiences of women throughout history. They were not merely passive figures confined to the domestic sphere. They were workers, entrepreneurs, managers, and scholars. They actively contributed to the economic, social, and cultural fabric of their communities, and their stories continue to inspire us today as we strive for a world where all women are valued for their talents and contributions. As we drift into the realm of dreams, let us carry with us the image of these remarkable women, the alewives with their bubbling brews, the market sellers with their vibrant stalls, the noble women with their sprawling estates, and the nuns with their quiet devotion. Let their stories resonate with us, reminding us of the resilience and strength of women throughout the ages. As we close our eyes and surrender to sleep, let us honor these women of the past and all the women who continue to shape our world today. Good night. As we delve deeper into the lives of women during the medieval era, it becomes evident that their roles, responsibilities, and experiences were as varied as they were intricate. In this section, we will explore the lives of women under the feudal system, their involvement in the church, and the ways education and literacy influenced their existence. In feudal societies, women's lives were largely determined by their social standing. At the top of the hierarchy were noble women who enjoyed certain privileges and responsibilities. They were typically married at a young age, often for political reasons or to strengthen alliances among noble families. While these marriages were politically motivated, it would be incorrect to assume that noble women were mere pawns in these transactions. Many noble women actively managed their estates, especially when their husbands were away, which was often the case during wars or crusades. These women were not only responsible for overseeing the daily operations of the estate, but also for making significant decisions that could impact their families and dependents. This gave them a certain degree of power and influence, albeit within the confines of a patriarchal society. On the other hand, peasant women, who constituted a substantial portion of the population, lived lives of hard labor. They worked alongside men in the fields, tended to animals, and cared for the household. Their days were long and physically demanding. Despite their arduous lives, peasant women, like their noble counterparts, also possessed a certain level of autonomy. They were integral to the survival of their families and communities, not just as wives, mothers, and daughters, but also as workers and providers. Furthermore, the Church played a crucial role in the lives of medieval women. While the Church's teachings reinforced societal expectations of women as subservient and morally inferior to men, it also offered opportunities for women to lead spiritual lives. Women could become nuns, taking vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, dedicating their lives to prayer and service. Convents often served as educational centers for women, where they could learn to read and write and gain knowledge about religion, medicine, and other subjects. Notable figures like Hildegard of Bingen and Julian of Norwich emerged as influential church members, contributing to theological discourse and leaving behind significant works of spiritual literature. Although education and literacy were generally limited to the upper classes and clergy, there were exceptions. In some areas, particularly in towns and cities, girls might have attended church-run schools or received private lessons from tutors. Literate women often utilized their skills to manage household accounts, correspond with relatives or business associates, and read for pleasure or spiritual enrichment. While the majority of women in the Middle Ages were likely illiterate, those who had access to education could exert a certain level of influence within their families and communities. In conclusion, while women in the Middle Ages were undeniably constrained by societal norms and expectations, they navigated these constraints in ways that allowed them to exert influence, fulfill their responsibilities, and lead meaningful lives. Whether they were noble women managing vast estates, peasant women working tirelessly to provide for their families, or nuns contributing to the spiritual life of their communities, medieval women were not passive spectators, but active participants in their own lives and the world around them. As we delve deeper into this captivating period of history, let's continue to challenge our preconceived notions and seek a more nuanced understanding of the lives of women in the medieval era. In the subsequent section, we will delve into the pivotal roles women played in art and culture, their active participation in trade and commerce, and their remarkable efforts to resist and negotiate societal norms, ultimately carving out spaces for themselves. As you continue to relax and immerse yourself in this journey, let the inspiring stories of these resilient women fill you with awe for their strength, courage, and unwavering spirit. In the preceding sections, we explored the general landscape of medieval women's lives, their roles within the family, and their contributions to the labor force. Now, we shall embark on a deeper exploration of the distinct roles women played in the religious and political spheres of the medieval era. The Church held immense significance in medieval society, and women held prominent positions in various religious capacities. Although their contributions were often overlooked or underestimated, many women dedicated their lives to the pursuit of spirituality as nuns. Convents provided a sanctuary for women from the challenges of the outside world, offering them opportunities for intellectual growth and personal development. A notable example is Hildegard of Bingen, a German abbess who made significant contributions to music, botany, and theology in the 12th century. Her works continue to be revered and studied today, and she was ultimately canonized as a saint. However, it is important to acknowledge that the Church was not an entirely egalitarian institution. Women were often denied the opportunity to serve as priests or bishops, unable to deliver sermons or access religious texts. Despite these limitations, some women defied these restrictions. Figures like Julian of Norwich and Margaret Kemp utilized mystical experiences as a platform to share their profound spiritual insights. They documented their visions and ideas, assuming the role of spiritual guides despite the constraints imposed upon them. In the political realm, women's roles were even more intricate. Queens and noble women wielded considerable influence, often stepping in as regents during the absences of their husbands or sons. Women in the Middle Ages were involved in various aspects of society, including diplomacy, maintaining relationships with other nobles and kingdoms, and even leading troops into battle in some instances. One notable example is Eleanor of Aquitaine, a powerful queen known for her political acumen and influence. As the Queen of both France and England at different times, she played a crucial role in shaping the politics of the 12th century. However, their political power often depended on their relationships with men. When their husbands or sons were present, these women were expected to step back into a supporting role. Despite this, they were often the true power behind the throne, quietly influencing decisions and shaping policy. In contrast, common women had limited political influence. They could not hold office or vote, and their voices were often silenced in political matters. Nevertheless, they found ways to make their influence felt. Women participated in revolts, petitioned their lords for justice, and even formed guilds to protect their interests. While they may not have had formal political power, they were far from passive. It is important to recognize that the experiences of women in the Middle Ages were diverse. Some women were cloistered nuns, while others were powerful queens. Some were artisans and laborers, while others were wives and mothers. They faced restrictions and challenges, but they also found ways to navigate these limitations and make their voices heard. In religion and politics, as in every aspect of medieval life, women were active participants, shaping the world around them in ways both seen and unseen. In the next section, we will delve into the cultural and social lives of medieval women, exploring their roles as patrons of the arts, their involvement in the world of fashion, and their participation in popular pastimes. As we continue our journey through the Middle Ages, we will gain a deeper understanding of the richness and complexity of women's lives during this era. As you close your eyes and prepare to drift into sleep, imagine the bustling streets of a medieval city, the tranquil serenity of a convent, or the grandeur of a royal court. Recall the women who lived, loved, worked, and dreamed within these spaces, their stories interwoven into the rich tapestry of history. Let's now venture into the realm of marriage and family life, a significant aspect of a woman's existence during the medieval era. Like many other aspects of life during this period, it was deeply influenced by societal expectations and the authority of the Church. A medieval woman's life was often predetermined, with a clear trajectory laid out for her. She was expected to marry, bear children, and be under the guardianship of a man, first her father and then her husband. Marriage during the Middle Ages was primarily an economic and strategic arrangement between families rather than a union of love. The woman, often a mere girl by our standards, had little to no say in the matter. Marriages were meticulously arranged by the families of the bride and groom with the primary objective of enhancing their social standing or wealth. Dowries, a sum of money or property brought by the bride to her husband upon marriage, were a common practice. The size of the dowry often determined the type of husband a woman could attract. If a woman's family was financially constrained and unable to provide a substantial dowry, she might be compelled to enter a convent or remain a spinster, a term used for an unmarried woman. In rare instances where love did blossom within these arranged marriages, it was often regarded as an added bonus rather than a fundamental requirement. The concept of romantic love as the cornerstone of marriage is a relatively modern notion, and it would have been entirely foreign to a medieval woman. Once married, a woman's primary responsibilities were to bear children and manage the household. However, it's important to note that managing the household in medieval times was vastly different from our present-day notion of homemaking. It involved overseeing servants, managing finances, and even handling the family's agricultural affairs, making it a significant and challenging role. Childbearing, on the other hand, was perilous. Without the medical knowledge and technology we have today, many women perished during childbirth. Infancy was also a common cause of death, making the struggle to secure a lineage and heir a fraught and heart-wrenching one. The Church held considerable influence over married women's lives. It advocated for marital fidelity and prohibited divorce. Nevertheless, it was not uncommon for men, particularly those of higher social standing, to have mistresses. Women, however, were expected to remain faithful under the threat of severe punishment. Despite the Church's influence, it was not entirely successful in controlling the behavior of all medieval women. Some women defied societal norms and expectations to forge their own paths. They became influential figures in religion, literature, and even politics. For instance, Eleanor of Aquitaine, the queen consort of both France and England, was a formidable figure in her own right. She participated in the Second Crusade, ruled as regent in her husband's absence, and was the mother of 3 kings. She defied the traditional expectations of medieval women and demonstrated that women could wield considerable power. In literature, women like Julian of Norwich and Margery Kempe made significant contributions. Julian, an anchor, is renowned for her work, Revelations of Divine Love, the first book in English known to have been written by a woman. Kempe, on the other hand, is remembered for her autobiographical work, The Book of Margery Kempe, which offers a rare and valuable glimpse into the spiritual life of a laywoman in the Middle Ages. As we explore the lives of these exceptional women, it is crucial to remember that they were the exceptions, not the norm. Most women in the Middle Ages led quiet domestic lives, constrained by societal expectations and the Church's rule. Despite these limitations, they found ways to influence their world, express their creativity, and survive in a harsh and unforgiving era. As we conclude this section, let us reflect on the courage and resilience of these medieval women. Their lives may have been vastly different from ours, but their spirit and tenacity continue to inspire us today. In the next section, we will explore the religious life of women during this time, examining how faith shaped their daily lives and provided them with a unique platform for influence. As we delve deeper into the medieval era, we encounter the realm of education. A common misconception is that education was exclusively for men during this period. While formal education was largely limited to men, it doesn't mean women were entirely uneducated. Women of different social classes had diverse ways of learning and acquiring knowledge. Although their education primarily focused on their roles as wives, mothers, and caregivers. In the early Middle Ages, education was predominantly oral, centered around songs, folk tales, and moral lessons. These were passed down from mother to daughter and within the broader community. Noble women were often tutored in the household, learning subjects like reading, writing, arithmetic, etiquette, music, and even languages. This education prepared them for their future roles in managing households and being suitable spouses for noble husbands. For women of lower classes, Education was more practical, emphasizing skills essential for their future roles, such as spinning and weaving, cooking, and basic medical care. Women in the medieval ages learned by observing and assisting their mothers and other women in their communities. Despite the practical nature of their education, it holds immense value. These skills were crucial for the survival of families and communities, and women were respected for their expertise in these areas. In contrast, monastic life offered women a different level of education. Convents were among the few places in the Middle Ages where women could receive formal education. Nuns learned to read and write in Latin, studied the Bible and other religious texts, and some convents even had libraries where they could read and study a wide range of subjects from theology to philosophy and science. Some of these women achieved great intellectual recognition. For instance, Hildegard of Bingen was a renowned writer, composer, philosopher, and mystic, whose works had a significant impact both within and beyond the convent. However, as the Middle Ages progressed, opportunities for women's education declined. The rise of exclusively male universities led to the association of formal education with masculinity, pushing women out of the sphere of education and confining their roles to the domestic sphere. This was a setback for women's education, and it would take centuries to regain the ground lost. Despite these challenges, women continued to learn and share their knowledge. They found ways to overcome barriers, learning from each other and the world around them. They wrote, read, composed, painted, and debated, often under the radar of the male-dominated society. In conclusion, while women's education in the medieval ages was undoubtedly limited compared to men's, it is important to recognize that women were not passive recipients of their circumstances. They actively sought to learn, create, and contribute to their societies. They used their knowledge and skills to navigate a world that was often hostile to them. In doing so, they left a lasting legacy that continues to inspire us today. As we drift into the night, let us take a moment to appreciate the resilience and resourcefulness of these women. They remind us that learning is not just about formal education, it's also about acquiring skills, sharing wisdom, and relentlessly pursuing knowledge, even in the face of adversity. As we close our eyes and prepare to sleep, let's carry with us the lessons they've taught us to face tomorrow's challenges with courage and determination. Now, let's delve into the fascinating history of women during medieval times and explore their significant roles in the world of business and trade. Contrary to popular belief, women were not confined to their homes during this era. They actively participated in various commercial activities, defying societal constraints and contributing to the economy. In many medieval cities, women were common market participants, selling a wide range of goods, from food and textiles to precious metals. Some even ran their own workshops, managing employees, negotiating transactions, and traveling to other cities to forge trading connections. This was no small feat, considering the societal limitations that typically restricted women's mobility and independence. One of the most renowned examples of a successful businesswoman is Dame Juliana Berners, a 15th-century English woman. Berners was rumoured to be the prioress of the Priory of St. Mary of Sopwell in Hertfordshire. Beyond her religious duties, Berners was also a prolific writer and businesswoman. She wrote extensively on various subjects, including heraldry, hawking, and hunting. Notably, she was a pioneer in the printing business, a rare endeavour for women at the time. The guild system played a pivotal role in empowering women to participate in commerce. Guilds were associations of artisans or merchants who regulated the practice of their craft within a specific town. Women could join these guilds and benefit from the protection and support they provided. In some regions, there were even guilds exclusively for women, often associated with feminine crafts like spinning, weaving, or brewing. However, it's important to recognize that not all women had equal opportunities in the business world. Women from lower classes were often restricted to selling goods in markets or working as laborers in workshops. In contrast, women from the upper classes possessed the resources and connections to establish more profitable businesses. Additionally, widows had more opportunities compared to other women. This was because, under the law, widows could inherit their husband's property and continue his business. Many widows seized this opportunity and became successful businesswomen in their own right, maintaining their independence and securing a comfortable life for themselves and their children. Some women also chose to become alewives or female brewers. This was a popular choice because brewing could be done at home while also fulfilling domestic responsibilities. However, alewives often faced negative stereotypes and were frequently accused of dishonest practices. Despite these challenges, the contributions of women to the medieval economy should not be underestimated. Their involvement was crucial in maintaining the economic stability of their households and communities. In some cases, women's earnings were the primary source of income for their families. As we've seen, life for women in medieval times was far from easy, yet they found ingenious ways to navigate societal constraints and carve out their own paths. Whether as queens, nuns, peasants, or businesswomen, they played crucial roles in shaping their world. Their stories, often overlooked, are an integral part of our history and deserve to be remembered and celebrated. As we drift off to sleep, let's reflect on these brave and resilient women. Their unwavering spirit and ability to overcome challenges serve as an inspiration for us all. May their stories remind us of the inherent strength and resilience within each of us, ready to be unleashed when faced with adversity. With that thought, let's continue our journey through the realm of dreams, guided by the tales of these remarkable medieval women. As we delve deeper into the intricate tapestry of medieval life for women, it's crucial to acknowledge the dual role of religion. While it provided comfort, it also caused suffering. The Christian Church, the dominant religious institution during the Middle Ages, wielded significant influence over all aspects of life, including women's lives. Although the Church offered opportunities for women, such as serving as nuns or abbesses in convents, it also imposed strict restrictions. Women dedicated to religious life were expected to adhere to rigorous rules of chastity, obedience, and poverty. They were often required to cut off contact with the outside world, including their families. The Church's teachings reinforced the notion of women's inferiority, both physically and morally, a belief that permeated society. Despite these formidable obstacles, some women managed to exert influence within the Church. Perhaps the most renowned example is Hildegard of Bingen, a German Benedictine abbess who lived during the 12th century. Hildegard, a renowned writer, composer, philosopher, Christian mystic, and visionary, made significant contributions to theology and natural history. She was also a skilled herbalist and healer, and her works on medicine and the natural world were widely respected. However, Hildegard was an exception, not the norm. Most women, regardless of whether they lived in a convent or the wider world, had limited power and influence. They were largely confined to the private sphere, responsible for household management and child-rearing. The drudgery of daily life was punctuated by frequent childbirth, which was both physically exhausting and dangerous. Maternal mortality rates were high, and many women lived in fear of dying during childbirth. Despite these hardships, women found ways to express themselves creatively. They spun stories and songs, created beautiful tapestries and embroidery, and even wrote poetry. Some women, like Christine de Pizan, a French author and poet, managed to break through societal constraints and make a name for themselves in the literary world. Christine de Pizan's works challenged the misogynistic attitudes of her time and advocated for women's intellectual capabilities. Her most famous work, The City of Ladies, was a defense of women and is considered one of the earliest feminist writings in the realms of business and trade. While women did participate in various trades, such as brewing, baking, weaving, and midwifery, their involvement was limited. Some women even ran businesses, although this was rare. In general, women's work was undervalued and underpaid, and they had few opportunities to accumulate wealth or achieve economic independence. As we conclude our exploration of women's lives in the Middle Ages, it is crucial to acknowledge the diversity of women's experiences. The lives of noble women were markedly different from those of peasant women, and the lives of nuns differed even further. Women's experiences during the Middle Ages were influenced not only by their gender, but also by their social class, geographical location, and personal circumstances. Despite the hardships they endured, women demonstrated remarkable resilience and resourcefulness. They navigated a society that undervalued them as equals and found ways to express their creativity, spirituality, and intellect. Women cared for their families, managed households, worked, and even ruled. Their stories, often overlooked in conventional histories, offer a richer and more nuanced understanding of the Middle Ages. As we drift into sleep, let us remember the women of the Middle Ages, their struggles, their triumphs, and their everyday lives. Let us honor their resilience, creativity, and strength. They were not mere spectators to history. They were active participants, shaping the world around them in both subtle and significant ways. Their legacy endures, resonating through the centuries and impacting our lives today.